Throughout his administration, Republican Governor Larry Hogan emphasized fiscal responsibility and cutting taxes. Now there's a new sheriff in town, so to speak, and it's no surprise that his successor, Democrat Wes Moore, has a different agenda. In his budget submission, Moore proposes a $63.1 billion spending plan that accelerates the minimum wage to $15 per hour, expands eligibility for child care tax credits, and makes permanent a tax credit to undocumented residents. But most importantly, the Moore budget seeks to boost investments in education and transportation. Mike, Governor Moore recommends an increase of $500 million for education, which was part of the legislation mandated by the General Assembly last year, and another $500 million for unspecified transportation projects. While it's early in the process, how would you rate the governor's first budget proposal?
I think he did a good job. I think it's, obviously his first priority, his first element was to go out and try to address the priorities that he identified in his campaign and be consistent with that and to be consistent with what the legislature had already mandated. I think he did that. I think one of the other things he did that was very smart, a couple of things he did that were smart were, one, he obviously stayed within the confines of the rainy day fund and the sunny day fund. So we've got all of the requirements that are met, whether it was Governor Moore or former Governor Hogan. There was a significant amount of additional dollars to spend. We're a $2+ billion surplus. And so there are resources there. So the question becomes, how do you do that judiciously? One of the things I think he did that was really smart was basically to put $150 million in for the legislature to be able to move around. So as opposed to kind of take up all of the spending capacity that was out there, he recognized that the legislature has that flexibility and the desire to fund their own activities and to make sure resources exist for that to occur, as opposed to moving stuff around that he'd already funded. So
well, you're jumping ahead on me, Mike.
I know, but I think that's a really smart move and a really smart thing to do, because it allows you to build a stronger relationship, I think, with the legislature in this process.
All right. Cheryl, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, one of the programs that the governor is going to impact is the Hogan plan to expand and widen the Capitol Beltway and I-270. Do you think it's going to be killed?
Probably at some point. I think to me, his budget is all over the map. I think unless you have hours and weeks and months to sort of read between the lines, it's still kind of vague. The more jobs that are created in the state of Maryland, those aspects probably wouldn't be as necessary to widen those roads. So to me, I kind of hope he does table it at least. We have many bigger fish to fry here in our state. So I think you hopefully will table it. It will be sort of not a top priority.
Interesting response there, Mike. Given the fact that this is a new budget and a new budget, I guess, regime in dealing with the General Assembly, the new rules allow the General Assembly, as you mentioned earlier, to move things around. How's this going to change the dynamic between the governor and the legislature? Because in the past, the governor recommended and the legislature could only reject.
Right. Now, I think it creates an interesting dynamic, because I think the expectation is that now you have a Democratic governor coming in with Democratic legislature. And so everyone's going to be on the same page. And, I think there's a sense that, of course, as Democrats, they'll spend a lot of money. I think that's a misnomer much of the time. But nevertheless, I think what it sets up is the governor's position, whether it's a Democratic or a Republican governor, is still going to have to be much more of kind of the budget sheriff. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Governor Moore plays that role. How do you kind of work with the legislature? How do you lead them to certain points? But how do you pull them back? Because somebody's got to kind of be the traffic cop. And I think the governor has to play that role. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they balance that relationship between what he wants to get done and what the legislature thinks they want to get done. And I don't think they're going to be on the same team as much as people expect they will be.
So, Cheryl, we're running out of time in this segment, but let's talk about education real quickly. The governor's allocated $500 million more for education, and there's a blueprint for education. But at the same time, he's cutting the Boost program, which was a Hogan administration program that allowed scholarships program for low-income children. Given the crisis we're seeing in education, is that a wise move?
No. I think it gives choice, and it gives children an opportunity that aren't faring well in the public school system to have an option to go and thrive in another capacity. So I was actually kind of shocked that he took that off the table, frankly. I thought he would be completely behind that. So I think it's a very bad move. And I think it's a disadvantage to underprivileged children. Underprivileged children, many of them, thrive in situations where they have more one-on-one training or focus from the teacher, and you tend to get those in smaller private schools. So to me, honestly, I was shocked. Mr. Love, Peace, and Harmony took that off the table. So yeah, I think it's a bad move.
Well, as I said, we're still very early in the process. And of course, many other states are moving in the opposite direction with respect to school choice. So I intend to bring this up as a topic on future programs. But one major thing that the governor did this week was to remove some of the appointees from the Hogan administration and plan on replacing them with his own, particularly on the Public Service Commission. We'll talk about that next week. When we come back from this short break, what's causing the fentanyl crisis in Montgomery County? And is there any way to stop it? Stay tuned.